Do you want a movie like The Devil Wears Prada that talks more about the immigrant experience in life? Let's talk about Problemista. Hey everyone, it's David Stark from Watch or Pass, and I'm here to talk to you about Problemista, which is premiering on March 1st, 2024 in New York and LA, March 15th in DC, and March 22nd nationwide. It is a new original story written and directed by Julio Torres, and my hot take is I definitely think you should watch it. I did not know what to expect going into this film, but I really loved it. It is imaginative, it is funny, it has this really dry sense of humor. It is dark at times. It has plenty of heart and heartache. It has this really interesting way of telling a story about the immigrant experience and some of the things that can happen in a funny, entertaining, and out there way. So I definitely think you should watch it. I definitely think you should check it out when it comes to theaters in your area. And I'm going to tell you a little about the film, a few things I liked, a few things I didn't like, and then really, really quickly go into the ending. So as you can imagine, there will be spoilers in the ending section. If you don't want to know what happened in this film, I would turn it off when I get there. Before that, I'll keep it vague. I'll keep it spoiler free, unless you know when I get to those spoilers. So, Problemista follows Alejandro, who is an immigrant from El Salvador. He is struggling in New York. He has this dream of being a toy designer, of working for Hasbro. And he has these odd toy ideas that he keeps writing down, keep hoping will be made, but it's not really working. And while this is happening, Alejandro meets someone that is going to change his life for better and a lot for worse. So, things I liked about this movie. The first, it's really funny. It has this really great writing and a wonderful kind of like dry sense of humor. A lot of that is just Julio himself, Julio Torres, wrote, directed, produced, starred in this film, and his character is just a lot of fun, has a lot of interesting mannerisms, and the way he like says things, the way he reacts to things, all are very funny. But also, it's these characters that he has created around him. They're all very out there, very strange, but they really mesh together and do these very funny, very witty, kind of dark comedic situations. The second thing I really loved, it is imaginative. It has some wonderful sequences and imaginative aspects. Some of that is from Alejandro's recollections of growing up. Some of that are the things that happen while he is in New York. But it is definitely a journey that is filled with real and fantastical elements. The third thing I loved the heartache. The story has a lot of disappointment and false starts, and that is, important for a story about the immigrant experience. It really helps you get invested in Ali's story and helps to kind of really sell the depths that he goes to in this journey. The fourth thing I loved on, balancing the heartache, there is a ton of heart. There is a ton of heart in Ali's character. He is a very kind of like good person. He's a very kind of like thoughtful, hopeful person. And the film overall just kind of like balances the heartache with some very kind of wonderful moments. And this is all helped by these characters. You got Tilda Swinton, you've got Julio, you've got Riza. They all play really wonderful out there characters. I kind of mentioned it in the humor part, but the characters themselves are all very unique, very different people than you would expect them to play. And I really love seeing how they all fit together in this strange story. So, all that being said, things I didn't really love as much. I mean, two very minor things. One, there's some CG at the start, and surprisingly, this film doesn't seem to use a ton of CG, but at the start, there is some CG in some of the kind of imaginative sequences that happen. It was a little distracting, but it wasn't that big of a deal. I didn't really mind because the movie itself is so good. And the second thing I didn't love as much, some of Ali's choices kind of put more drama into the formula than I think are necessary. There is one part in the movie where he has this really kind of simple choice, I thought, and he turns it down for some reason, but it does help to play into the overall narrative. So some not maybe not logical decisions that seemed weird at the time, but then eventually worked out. So all that being said, Problemista is coming to theaters near you in March. So definitely check it out when it comes to your local market. And I'm going to go into the ending right now. So if you don't want to know what happens in this film, I would turn it off now because there will be spoilers. So like I said, Alejandro, or Ali, is an immigrant from El Salvador. He is really trying for the Hasbro incubator program where people will come up with these new toy ideas. And Ali has a bunch of ideas. They're all strange though, but they are funny in their own way. He has an idea for like a Cabbage Patch Kid doll that has a cell phone that will have like a strange message on it. Or there was one where there was like a doll that has a Venmo request from a friend for food from 2 weeks ago, and it like shows like the struggles of life. Or a doll that has like a picture of a bump that developed on their mouth, and they're like trying to determine what that is. It's all these kind of like, I don't know, ideas for toys that add more real life problems to these toys, kind of turn them from child fantasy items into kind of real life primers. They're funny, they're a little weird, but it's kind of a theme throughout, which I liked. Now, Alejandro also has this job at this cryo freeze center where people can freeze their bodies in the hopes that sometime in the future, whatever problem that they have with their body will be resolved and they'll be able to wake up and live, their full life in the future. Early on, Ali is assigned to Bobby, who is played by Riza. I loved his character in this. He's really fun. He is an artist who has this like series of work about eggs, and no one really understood it except for one person, Elizabeth, played by Tilda Swinton. But unfortunately, Bobby develops some sort of cancer, I believe, and decides to freeze himself and essentially leave everything up to Elizabeth to manage, his legacy, manage the payments for this expensive cryo freezing process. And she is a character on her own. She is essentially like exceedingly negative, exceedingly critical. She criticizes everything. Can never be happy. She will always find something wrong with you. She gets very stuck on these specific things. Like her big thing is she wants all of Bobby's work cataloged in FileMaker Pro, which is, I guess, this database system, this older database system. No one really uses it. And throughout the story, she will mention like, oh, like, did you get that in FileMaker Pro? Because I loaded it up on my computer and it wasn't right. And Ali is kind of just trying to navigate this. Now, Ali has a job at this cryo free center, but unfortunately, he accidentally unplugs one of the devices for a very little bit of time. That causes him to be fired, and unfortunately for Ali, he's an immigrant. He needs his green card, and without someone sponsoring his green card, he will be deported back to El Salvador. So he runs into Elizabeth after he gets fired. She realizes that maybe this might be a path to get his green card, so he starts working for her to help her put on a show for Bobby to showcase his work. Now, there are a lot of issues that have to happen for this show to happen. They have to track down some of Bobby's art. They have to catalog it in FileMaker Pro, which is always a concern throughout the film. He has to deal with Elizabeth's quirks, with her kind of ups and downs. And they have to make peace with some of the people that Bobby had given his art to, that Elizabeth is no longer happy with or close with. So throughout this whole journey, Ali is like a strong support for Elizabeth. He kind of like is able to work with her. He can kind of like shrug off some of her mannerisms, some of her criticisms, and eventually they, begin to rely on each other and they begin to kind of like trust each other. Now, unfortunately for Ali, working for Elizabeth could be a path to a green card, but she is not paying him very well. So he has to do a lot of very strange things, a lot of very kind of uh, interesting and painful things to earn money to pay his immigration lawyer. One of those is he sublets his room in this apartment to someone so that he could, get some cash to pay his lawyer. He does a lot of odd jobs on Craigslist, which is a fun sequence because Craigslist is a person in this, a strange kind of like Ursula-like person who is giving him different jobs. Their interaction is fun to see. It's kind of interaction is fun to see if you ever thought of like Craigslist ads as like actual conversations. It is a really fun sequence. But throughout all of this, he is desperately trying to make this show happen to kind of like help Elizabeth fulfill her goal. Partly, I think, to get his green card, but also it seems like he really understands Bobby. There are some sequences in this where he understands Bobby's work. He understands like what this work means, and he understands what it means to Elizabeth as well. So he is a very good conduit for helping to encourage her, helping to make sure that this show happens. Now, like I said, there are some strange decisions here that I didn't really love. And one of those is kind of like later on when it seems like maybe his green card is not going to happen because Elizabeth keeps pushing it off. He gets an offer for a job at this immigration lawyer. His immigration lawyer apparently like doesn't speak Spanish. Neither he or his assistant speak Spanish. And so the immigration lawyer wants to hire Aleon as a paralegal. He says, you'll get paid. I'll sponsor your green card. You'll get to stay. I was like, oh, great. Like, this is a solution for everyone's problem. And Ali turns it down, which I thought was strange. Like, he is worried about being deported. He's worried about having to go back to El Salvador. And this is an avenue for him to avoid that. And he just turns it down. But I think it was because he really wanted to see this show happen, even if Elizabeth was difficult, even if it was taking time. He wanted to see this show happen. He really believed in Bobby's work. So I understand why he might have turned it down, but it feels like maybe he should have like taken the job and then done the show on the side because the show would have happened eventually. So eventually they were able to track down the egg paintings. get a sequence. Part of that involves Elizabeth having to apologize to someone that Bobby had an affair with, one of his art students who he gave one of the eggs to. And this was a wonderful sequence because Elizabeth doesn't talk to this person. Ali reads this like letter that she wrote to her that is very beautiful, very heartfelt. It causes the student to cry, causes her to forgive Elizabeth for what she did, and causes them to get the egg. And then you see later that Ali actually wrote that whole thing, printed it out, didn't let her read it, didn't let her see it, didn't let Elizabeth kind of know anything about this letter. So he orchestrated this all, this feeling, this like wonderful moment that humanizes Elizabeth was all manufactured by Ali just to get this done. Eventually, he's able to get a show for Bobby, but it is not in the most prestigious gallery. So Elizabeth gets upset about this. She wants it in like the, you know, the biggest galleries because this is her husband and his legacy. And at this point, Ali and her have interacted enough that Ali's like, do you want this show or not? This is the only way that's going to happen. Do you want this show or not? And eventually she capitulates, which I liked. It showed that Alejandro was, you know, starting to kind of stand up to her and, you know, believe in Bobby, but also like push back on some of Elizabeth's tendencies. They get to the show. There are other issues because the, you know, wall is so small, so they're not going to be able to do the full installation. It is not the most glamorous show, but they are able to do it. They're able to sell all of Bobby's paintings that they wanted to. And this allows Elizabeth to have the money to continue the lifestyle that she wants and also to pay for Bobby's cryo process. Now, Ali thinks, okay, great. Now that this show has happened, I will work for her. He goes, he buys a bottle of wine, he goes to celebrate. And then he gets a message on his phone from Elizabeth, which tells him that by the time he gets this, she will be frozen, that she, you know, she you know, wrote him a glowing letter of recommendation. She also kind of like started the green card process, and she doesn't think that there'll be any problems, even though she's no longer going to be around, so she can't really sign the green card forms. So Ali thinks that he is you know, not going to be able to do this. So it seems like Alejandro's hopes are like lost because now no one's going to sign his green card. He's been working all this time to kind of get on Elizabeth's good favor, to get her to sign his paperwork, and now she's not going to even do it. But during the message, she also drops that the person at Hasbro who rejected his application, she drops his name and tells him he should just go up there and demand a job. Like he basically works there now because she tracked down who this person is and she gave him a glowing recommendation. So she thinks nothing bad will happen. This is compounded by the fact that during this time, Alejandro saw that one of his ideas that he submitted to the incubator program for his application ended up being a toy that Hasbro made. It was a, you know, the Cabbage Patch Kids cell phone toy. So Alejandro goes to the toy company, and normally he would have been fairly meek. He would have gone up, asked for a meeting, and they would have said he's busy, and he probably would have like walked away. But now he has some of Elizabeth's teaching, some of the things that she like, you know, I don't know, chiseled into him, like molded him. So he gets in there and he asks for this person. I think it was Brian. And she said, "Oh, like he is not in a meeting. He's in a meeting right now. Or is he expecting you?" And I was like, "No, but you know, he knows who I am." And she's like, "Oh, well, he can't. You know, you can't get back here if you don't have a meeting." And you see someone walking by. He's like, "Oh, is that Brian?" And he like goes up to this person, you know, asks if he's Brian. He says yes, and then like basically butts into the meeting that he has, tells the other people to go away. And Alejandro has this very kind of like commanding conversation with Brian about how you know, he stole his idea and that wouldn't be a good look. And Brian's like, well, you know, who knows where my ideas come from? And Alejandro like keeps digging in and eventually forces Brian to hire him into the incubator program and also to sponsor his green card and make some other changes as well. So this was a wonderful scene because it shows Alejandro, who typically was kind of meek and typically was soft-spoken, has taken Elizabeth's teachings and kind of really fully put them into practice and is able to get his way. So he gets hired, he gets to stay in America, he gets to fulfill his dream, and this would be a wonderful place for this movie to end, but it keeps going. The next stage is 322 years in the future. You see both Bobby and Elizabeth awake in this future world. It doesn't look super futuristic. It definitely feels kind of like a slap together future, but it's fine. Um, they are awake. They are kind of fighting. It seems like maybe some of the hostilities that happened during their marriage are now they were just preserved for 322 years later, and they are both together, but maybe that wasn't the dream that they both thought it would be. But in any event, They, along with all the other people who were frozen in this process, go to a mixer at the start to start their kind of like new journey in the future. And while they're there, Elizabeth goes to try to get a drink. The bar's not open. She is not happy about this. She demands that they get more alcohol. It is still Elizabeth. And while this is happening, a very nice, older looking man with this big smile starts walking up to her. And one of the people in the room mentions that, oh, that's Alejandro. I forget his last name, but that's Alejandro. He was a, innovative toy designer. So this is Ali. This is Ali in the future. He lived a long, full life. And now he is going up to see Elizabeth and he is smiling. Elizabeth doesn't really know, but then she finally places that this is Alejandro, that this is Ali, the one that she, knew very briefly before she froze herself. It seems like they are finally reunited. It seems like Ali is very happy to see her. He is able to kind of like, I don't know, manage her tendencies, and maybe she just wants to thank her for everything that she did. He lived a long, full life. He had plenty of memories, and then he decided to freeze himself. I assumed so that he would then be able to meet Elizabeth and maybe also to meet Bobby. Bobby was such a big influence on his life. Maybe that was also part of the case. You don't really know because it kind of ends there once they recognize each other. But that is Problemista. Like I said, I definitely think you should check it out. I really liked it. I thought it was fun, interesting, a little dark at times, but overall, it was a great story that's filled with heart and heartache. So definitely check it out when it comes to your local area. And thanks so much for watching. If you liked this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.